Coming up on this episode of Belief Hole.
Whatever you want to call it, these things are real, and there is danger in this stuff, which is why they would take these haunted objects, cursed objects, they would take them from situations that they investigated, bring them back to their home, and keep it all in this big room that they had blessed once a week for 50 years to protect the outside world from the evil.
The power of Christ compels you!
They start buying bracelets for it. They start dressing it up.
Well, they think it's a little girl.
Yeah, they start treating her as if this doll is a real girl.
Because if there was an entity attached, it would feed into that story that would be good for the entity.
Don't feed the bears.
Yeah, starve your ghouls, people.
Starve your ghouls.
Ed and Laurain, yeah, they're taking the doll out of there because at this point they've been developing their haunted
Occult Museum.
You can't just burn it and throw it away. You have to take care of it. You have to treat it.
It's toxic waste.
Yeah, it's like spiritual toxic waste.
Well, in a magical sense, you have to bind it.
You have to keep it caged.
You can't release that back into the ether. And so a lot of people believe that it actually was inspired by the Son of Sam killings.
Oh, that makes sense.
Where he did actually kill people.
He didn't have a hook hand, though.
No.
Because the problem with that is if you go to jail, you think they're probably going to take your hook hand away. You'll have to hold on to that. Gabe Convict with hook for a hand.
Let him keep it.
He's handicapped.
But it's my hand.
So if you guys were to be asked, have you heard of satanic cult activity in your town?
I haven't heard of any, but...
I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility, though.
Well, in this random telephone survey on satanic beliefs, 45% of local respondents said that they had heard of satanic cult activity.
45%?
Almost half had heard of satanic cult activity where this doll was found.
Well, that's a lot.
Local police have reported cult activity happening in the woods, child sacrifice, and then there's this devil doll.
Yeah. It looks made for a ritualistic purpose.
And it was found in the woods nearby. Stay out of the woods, for Pete's sake.
Pete's sake, stay out of the woods.
Conspiracy.
Synchronicity. Sasquatch.
Donald Trump.
Alien races. Satanism in Hollywood.
MK Ultra.
Pleiadians.
Mandela effect.
Close the door, Ed.
Jury! Close your door!
Snowflakes.
Inner Earth. Disagreements.
My lab.
JFK assassination.
Flat Earth.
Corey Feldman. Magicians are demons. Specters and spooks. Sleep paralysis. Muslim Islamicists. The gender spectrum.
Yes!
Alternative history. Shadow people.
Shh, quiet, I'm trying to say words with the mouth.
Psilocybin. Sorcery. Poltergeists. Fame. Evolution. Is it real?
Skull and Bone. Elf Tower. I would never talk about it. That's old. Y2K.
Cover-ups. The Oklahoma City bombing. Vampire.
That's seriously offensive.
It's so great. Boney Hanks. My girlfriend said that once when she meant to say. No, it was one of those text errors where you say thanks, and it was Boney Hanks. And we laughed.
Instead of thanks?
We laughed a lot.
That's great.
I'm lost.
Welcome
Welcome.
to the show.
What did we used to say at the beginning?
Well, hello, hello.
Well, hello, listeners.
Welcome, guys. Episode 27.
Submitted for your approval
26. It's 26.
of the Belief Hole Society.
You can't use that.
I can't use that, can
But
I?
today we're doing a fun campfire episode. We're going to tell some spooky stories. Although I have a feeling it's going to be a lot like all of our other episodes where there's stories and research.
Well, we got some history. We got some research. This will be a show like any other show.
Like none other.
Or like none other show. We felt like we should have a kind of Halloween in July.
Well, it's been a long time since we've done a creepy episode.
And it's campfire season. It's spooky
That's
campfire
true.
story season.
Oh, we did just get through an intense heat wave.
Yeah, thank God.
It is campfire. We should do that soon. A legitimate campfire.
Yeah.
Should I play the sound effect?
Put it in, John.
Let me put it in.
Get us in the mood for the campfire tales.
1 second.
The only thing about that is crickets put me to bed, too. Oh, that does sound good, though.
Pretty good.
Everybody snuggle up for some spooky
Just for
stories.
a minute or two, and then we'll collapse it back into the nothingness from whence it came.
So today we're going to be telling some spooky stories. We just went to go see Annabelle. Annabelle Comes Home.
Which was surprisingly good, actually.
Oh, that was shorter than I expected.
Well, let me loop it. I thought it was looped.
Sound guy fail.
Yeah, it was good.
John, I know you're not a movie guy.
No, I like movies. It has to be the right one. I actually do really like creepy movies.
Yeah,
so.
this was well done, and it was also very like salt of the earth horror movie. You know, like
That's a weird terminology.
isn't it? Yeah, but
Salt of the earth
well,
horror
it was very
movie.
traditional feeling in the sense that it was like you had evil and you had good. and it's based on a true story with Ed and Laurain Warren, the demonologists and ghost hunters, the earliest of those in the industry, I'd say.
It's do you remember The Conjuring, that excellent horror movie?
Yes, I do. That was good.
It was the same universe, Ed and Laurain Warren,
Oh, yeah.
which, yes, is based on our universe, real folks.
Yeah, they were real people.
Yeah.
Good people. I think you'd actually like it. It was interesting the way they did it because, I don't want to get all pop culture-y, political, or Chris is in his head on the microphone. I'm not going to
get into the episode.
No, but what I liked about the movie was it had this traditional sense of good and evil that you just don't see represented in film anymore. Like you had something demonic and you had people that were fighting it. And there wasn't a blend of like, maybe the demon's good, maybe, it was just kind of like this, it was a good yin and yang.
Yeah, it's most, of those movies. You got The Ritual, that was pretty black and white, but good and bad.
Yeah. No, that's true. I just mean it just had a traditional sense to it.
I know what you're saying.
Maybe I'm getting in the weeds.
This sounds like something you just felt. Like it was just...
It stayed true to the tone of Ed and Laurain Warren and like what they believed. And that's what I liked about it. Because it was about them,
Yeah.
They were very religious people and it followed that line without preaching it. But I mean in the sense that it didn't put... Because, nowadays in Hollywood, a lot of times religion...
Yeah,
it's put in it's put in a light of like, well, those silly, people. But it actually gave like Christianity in the sense some authority in the traditional exorcism horror.
It used to be that the idea of Christianity itself was, sort of the just side, but it seems like that doesn't exist as much anymore.
Well, like in Hollywood, I think especially.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
In Hollywood. Anyways, this is off
That was
topic.
a real cricket, by the way.
Was it really?
Yeah, coming from the wall.
That was actually some nice extra banter, Cricket.
Thank you, Cricket.
Yeah, it's funny that started last night before we were getting ready to do this campfire episode, and I walked in here and that thing was being a loud asshole. But it sounds good in the mix here.
This is a family show.
It doesn't sound
No,
a
it's
family
not.
show.
I guess not really. Anyway, so to get back on track here, sorry. I like the movie.
You know what I'm excited for is It Too.
That looks pretty horrifying.
Yeah.
It Chapter 2. It looks good. It's got Bill Hader, who I like a lot.
Oh, good. Remember the part, if anyone's seen the trailer yet, when the grandma walks behind
Silly. Naked.
and it's like
Creepy.
Wow.
But yeah, Annabelle was good, I thought. And when it comes to scary movies, I don't know if that was James Wan that directed it or produced it.
He was
but he always
involved.
does a good one, like Insidious. The guy who plays Ed Warren is the main guy from Insidious. You remember that movie?
Mm-hmm.
So it's good. The writing is good. The first Annabelle was god awful. I saw it in theaters, and me and my girlfriend at the time just laughed through the whole thing because it was so bad.
I don't think I ever saw it.
So bad. But the second one was good, and this one was probably the best, I think, of the three.
We're going to be talking about this episode, some of the real encounters with the Warrens, the experiences they had specifically with Annabelle, and then some other things that actually tie in with the woods, which is what I want to get into, creepy stories with the woods, because it is campfire season,
That
as you
sounds
mentioned.
fun and spooky.
It's going to be good. And we're going to talk about Banshees. We had a great write-in from someone with a story, so I kind of brought that in to the show. We're going to do that because I thought that was a good story to do, because it takes place in the woods. And if it's true, which I trust this guy, seems like a good friend of the show. I don't know him, but I like his encouraging comments and his stories. So we're going to be doing that one. That's from Zayden coming up. And we have some other compelling stories, some that tie back into the Warrens.
Yeah, I'm going to tell the story of Annabelle, basically.
But if you've seen the movie...
It's not in the movie.
Well, okay, so the movie is... I would say it represents the original story of Annabelle. There are a lot of connections and tie-ins to the story. When you were telling me about the real encounter, or the real Annabelle story, I noticed how they put like kind of Easter eggs if you knew the actual story behind it. So if you've seen the movie or you know the Annabelle story, stay tuned for this, because this is going to be the actual history of Annabelle, and it's creepier than you might think.
Right, because the movie is basically like, in a timeline of chronology, it's basically a fictional account of what would happen with the Warren's daughter, who was real, if she was alone being babysat and Annabelle was loosed by the babysitter's precocious friend. I'm going to tell you the story of like where Annabelle came from, how the Warrens got a hold of her. I think it might be good at this point to just give a little background very quick.
Yeah, for those of you who don't know who Ed and Laurain are...
Should I kill the crickets or keep it on?
That is a great question. I don't know.
I genuinely don't know.
Let's fade them out for this part, I guess.
Okay. Goodbye.
Maybe bring them back for some storytelling later. See you in a bit, ambiance.
The characters known as Ed and Laurain Warren were real people. They kicked off the paranormal investigative movement, really. I mean, I don't know if there were ghost hunters, demonologists. I guess there might have been, but they were the ones...
They were definitely the ones that brought it to the mainstream culture. You know. Yeah, they investigated Amityville Horror. They investigated the case in Britain that we covered on our Halloween episode, Enfield Poltergeist. They were involved in that. All the big ones. back in the day.
They brought a lot of attention to this, and they got a lot of criticism because they had written books on it, right? And they were invited to do media appearances and stuff talking about it. And, when criticized, like, you're getting all this attention, you're doing it for the publicity and that kind of stuff. Ed's response to that was, yeah, we want publicity. We want people to know that there is evil in the world and this stuff is real and people need to protect themselves. He wanted to spread awareness.
Interesting.
Ed was a demonologist. And Laurain, she had a touch of the gift, right? She was psychic in a sense.
She was a
Clairvoyant?
clairvoyant.
Medium?
She was a trance medium.
Okay. Oh, trance medium?
Yeah. The Catholic faith was definitely a huge part of what they did, but they weren't preachy about it. They were more interested in just helping people and less about like, this is, the right way, the wrong way. They just wanted people to realize that whatever you want to call it, these things are real and there is danger in this stuff, which is why they would take these artifacts and bring them back to their own house, which is crazy.
What artifacts?
Artifacts from places they would investigate, haunted objects, cursed objects. They would take them from situations that they investigated, bring them back to their home, and keep it all in this big room that they had blessed once a week for 50 years.
To protect the outside world from the evil that they believe they experienced.
And one of the cool things about them, I think that gives them a lot of credibility, is the fact that the church would go to them to send them when the church was alerted of some crazy demonic ghost encounter story.
Source.
Yeah, and they did it for 50 years. I think they had like 3,500 cases that they worked on.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
That's a lot of cases.
That'd be interesting to interview them.
Well, they're dead now.
Well, I meant it would have. Maybe we could interview them through a Ouija board.
They have children.
Nick's bringing one down later.
Like, do ghosts exist through the Ouija board?
Well, they would probably argue to not trust what comes through the Ouija board because it would be something pretending.
Oh, right. Well, yeah. Okay, I gotcha.
That'll come up later in the show. But they do have kids that have survived them, and
Really?
Well, they have a daughter.
And the son.
There's a stepson. Son-in-law.
Son-in-law, I think that's who I'm thinking of.
He's who took over the museum and who's taken over the research.
Yeah, so in their basement where they brought all these artifacts to keep the outside world protected from these artifacts, I think it's the Warren Occult Museum. It's actually in Connecticut. And I think you can take a tour there. They give tours. And there's a story I'm going to be telling
you
later.
Are you going to be there? Oh, I was like,
I'll be there on August 3rd, spreading awareness, collecting donations for the possessed and believeful. But yeah, we're going to be talking about some of the items that are in, and I actually thought it'd be interesting to do like a side series of each item in the museum and do the backstory behind each item complete with sound design and
that'd be cool.
That'd be
Speaking of which, I have a short list here. You guys want to hear some items that are lurking in the...
Let's hear them. I heard there's a werewolf paw. Is that true?
Yeah.
Because you were whispering that to me annoyingly while I was trying to do research.
That's not true.
They have a werewolf paw. Yeah, you did.
Totally.
See? She agrees.
They made that up. In the movie, there was a werewolf paw.
Oh,
and also, which was strange, is that the book that they had in the movie, it said the Black Shuck, which I thought was fascinating because we were just talking about doing an episode on that. It's a little known cryptid, allegedly, that's sort of like a werewolf.
Hellhound.
You know more about it than I do.
Yeah.
You don't hear about it a lot, but I feel like after this,
we're gonna talk briefly about the Black Shuck.
Yes.
That's a topic I've been wanting to do. And synchronistically, this was the crazy synchronicity. Right before we went to see the film, and I still don't know if there is any real involvement with the Warrens and Black Shuck, but in the movie there was. It played a big role in the movie. But before we went to see the film, we got a comment. I think it was from Marcia. Who suggested, first of all, she suggested we do like a campfire story type episode.
Right, that's weird.
That's exactly what we decided to do before she suggested it.
Right, which we've never done.
That's bizarre. Secondly, I think it was in that same comment, I think it was her that said she'd be interested in hearing one on the Black Shuck. And I had in my notes to do an episode on that a long time ago, and it's been sitting there. And then when we go to see the movie, the Black Shuck makes an appearance in the film. We just talked about it on the way to the movie and had no idea that there would be any reference. And it's just such a weird, oddball, paranormal thing.
Right. It's not a lot of people know about it.
It's a hellhound that, we'll get into it later.
Oh, you have some notes on it?
I do have a brief note on it.
But yeah, to answer your question, that werewolf paw was fictitious. The only thing they had in there in the museum was a book, but it's not called The Black Shuck, which is why I thought that was strange. Forget the title, but it's about werewolves that Ed Warren wrote because they investigated a potential werewolf experience in England. But it was a guy who didn't transform into a werewolf with hair and claws, but he was acting like a werewolf and attacked someone, and they ended up taking him back to the States to get exorcised.
Really?
That's the right word.
Yeah.
Not on the treadmill, but in the church.
On the treadmill. The power of health compels you.
A few things that are in
Power of health?
Yeah. That was good, right?
Yeah.
A few things that are in the condemned walls of the Ed and Laurain Warren Museum of Occult are the shadow doll that can come to you in your dreams and stop your heart. That's fun.
Oh, yeah, that's good.
The Conjuring mirror used for summoning spirits. The Satanic idol found deep in the woods of Connecticut.
I'll be covering that story
Oh, cool.
Because I've been wanting to for a long time.
The vampire's coffin used by a modern-day vampire. The Raggedy Ann doll, which is responsible for the death of a young man and multiple attacks on those who mocked said doll. That's what I'll be covering, Annabelle. Child tombstones that were used as satanic altars. That's sad. A famous organ that plays by itself. Psychic photography.
Well, you're going real fast there.
I was going to speed up towards the end. Pictures that would combust. Crucifixes that were malevolently thrown from walls and desecrated. Egyptian and African cursed items, death curses, possessed toys and animals that were stuffed after death, and a shrunken head. Just some of the fun things that are down in the museum.
Well, I want to go. I think that sounds like a fun field trip.
I wonder what the energy would feel like in there. Imagine it's got to be heavy.
Yeah, it would be it would be fun.
Yeah. Well, even watching...
Probably would come back with some friends, though.
Did you guys hear that? How timely. In the show notes, I'm going to link a video about one of those cases, and because you said that there must be a feeling of darkness, of heaviness in that room. Well, just watching the video, of course, there was like a creepy music playing behind it, but the guy was recounting the story that I'm going to be recounting here in the show about that satanic doll that was found in the woods.
Yeah, it's a creepy story.
I'm going to have a picture of this doll. In the show notes, there'll be a photo of this doll that I screen grabbed, but then we'll also have a link to the video. But looking at this doll, John, I'm going to show you right now, actually. I'm going to show it to you.
Ooh.
You can tell me how creepy it looks. And then I'm going to do this. Well, I can save the story for later, but I just want to show you the doll real quick and get your reaction.
Oh.
There, you can see it.
Whoa, that is weird.
Look at the eyes. Fall deep into the eyes, John.
It looks like almost like an alien.
With horns.
Yeah, that's scary.
Yeah.
Imagine finding that in the forest when you're alone.
If I saw that, I would run away.
Yeah, well, he tried. And oh boy, did he try. We'll get into that coming up.
He's still there.
So before we get going here, I guess might as well just get going. I wanted to start off this episode with talking about some of our campfire stories, like growing up. The original stories, the urban legends that you always hear and tell around the story.
Like the man with the hook for the hand, that kind of thing?
Yeah.
Oh, is that the one where was that with the babysitter?
No,
Whose phone is that?
Not mine.
Come on, guys. This is 101 podcasting.
I turned off everything. I didn't realize my computer was...
I turned off everything. I just didn't realize my computer was still on.
Hey, do you want to grab me a brewski? Where were we?
Campfire stories.
Take two.
So, Jonathan, the babysitter. You're talking about the one where it's... Which one were you thinking?
I love the sound of thunder.
I do too.
It's so creepy.
It's a great Ray Bradbury short story.
The Sound of Thunder.
Oh, yeah, that is a good
About
story.
time travel.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, back to the point.
Check it out. Tangent Town. Well, you were
Tangent Town.
You were saying Chris brought up the hook for the hand man,
Yeah,
and you said it has to do with the babysitter. I think you're blending stories.
maybe.
Although there might be a babysitter story with a hook for a
I'm
hand.
sure there's 1,000 versions.
Okay, so whenever I think of campfire stories, everyone thinks of that story, right? The hook for the hand. And I wanted to try to dig a little deeper and figure out where this came from, if there's any truth to that story that scared us as kids, right? So apparently, the urban legend supposedly dates back to the 1950s, but it first appeared in print in the 1960s in a Dear Abby newspaper.
Really?
Yeah. So it had already been like a tale told at that time. And I'm just going to read a quote from the
Dear Abby?
From the Dear Abby.
Was that an advice column?
Yeah.
Like, help me, what do I do?
Well, supposedly
slashed with a hook.
Teenage girl wrote in, and we'll have this linked in the show notes too. Teenage girl wrote in and said, if you're interested in teenagers, you will print this story. Because I guess Dear Abby was to give advice to teenagers and the like. I don't, if you're interested in teenagers. Well, I watched To Catch a Predator last night. Another weird synchronicity.
Come on.
Okay. Sorry, God. I don't know whether it's true or not, but it doesn't matter because it served its purpose for me. A fellow and his date pulled into their favorite lover's lane to listen to the radio and do a little necking. The music was interrupted by an announcer who said there was an escaped convict in the area who had served time for rape and robbery. He was described as having a hook instead of a right hand. The couple became frightened and drove away. When the boy took his girl home, he went around to open the car door for her. But then he saw a hook on the door handle. I don't think I will ever park to make out as long as I live, says the girl. I hope this does the same for other kids. Please include it in your article. Dear Abby.
I don't know.
No, but this isn't the origination of the story. This is just the first time it appeared in print, because it had already been a story that was told widely. And so a lot of people believe that it actually was inspired by the Son of Sam killings.
Oh, that makes sense.
Where he did actually kill people while they were necking,
He didn't have a hook hand, though.
No.
It was added for dramatic license, right?
Yeah,
Probably.
I believe so.
Because the problem with that is if you go to jail, you think they're probably going to take your hook hand away. You have to hold on to that.
It's like a disability rights act.
Escape convict with hook for a hand.
They give him like
a chainsaw
They
leg.
give him like a spork instead or something. Oh,
It's funny. I can't stop thinking about like the police letting him keep his.
we'll let him keep it.
He's handicapped.
He's like, but it's my hand.
But I wanted to know if there was truth to that story.
Yeah.
And I guess it was suggested it's partially inspired by real events. Then there are people, so this comes from Ranker, which is also where I got that, just because they were looking for the history. And there are like all these suggestions that it's these like Freudian suggestions about like misogyny and sexuality. And here's one from a writer, folklorist Bill Ellis thinks that the Hookman legend needs to teach a lesson to prying, morally self-righteous adults, not horny teenagers. He thinks the Hookman's disability represents, quote, his own lack of sexuality, and that the, quote, abnormal drive of some adults to keep teenagers apart is the true threat to society.
Abnormal drive to keep horny teenagers apart as a threat to society?
Yeah. So, like the girl written into Dear Abby, like,
Right.
to tell other teenagers, because this kept me from necking or whatever, getting up to no good. His argument that it points to
Like
like
being too like a repressive of a society, is that idea?
yeah, self-righteous adults are trying to keep their
Yeah.
kids from boning each other, so they proliferated that story.
Totally.
I think it's more likely that an escaped convict who got to keep his hook hand was running around in Lover's Lane.
Oh, that actually happened.
I was joking.
Well, I think it is probably based partially on the Son of Sam killings, although I thought that happened in the 70s, and these stories were around longer. So
Good job.
it's
good
real.
research.
It's real, guys. Well, it's hard to find. I mean, I don't think that there is any real documented evidence as far as I could find. If you guys can find out there in listening land, let me know if you find like
I like the babysitter story better.
which one is that?
John, cue the crickets.
Okay.
Here we go.
If I recall this is not going to be detailed because I didn't look into it before we recorded, but
Do a good job.
Which one is
I'll
this?
try.
Is this the it's coming from inside the house one?
no.
Oh,
This is the Turn Lights one.
that's not. No, I'll tell it as our babysitter told us. Thank you.
All right.
We had a babysitter we called Vampire Lady because when we first came home one night, we were out playing in the yard in our neighbor's house, and our parents had told her, "Now make sure you turn off lights when you leave a room," and she interpreted that as turn off every light in the house. So when we got home, we thought that she was like obviously an evil vampire.
She's sitting in the dark, quietly in the house.
waiting for us.
Yeah.
So we called her Vampire Lady, but
She was cute, though. Very cute.
her name was Crystal, and she, fitting to her moniker that we gave her, she told us creepy stories the first time we met her. And one of them was supposedly happened to her cousin or something at college. And as the story goes, she was hanging out with her cousin in their dorm room. They were going to go to a party, but her cousin's friend decided she was going to stay home and study for the night. So she says goodbye to her friend, and the cousin leaves. And then getting down to the parking lot, maybe starting to drive away, she realizes that she left her jacket in the dorm. So she goes back in, walks up the stairs, opens the door. She knows where the jacket is, so instead of turning the lights on because her roommate apparently went to bed, she just reaches for the jacket on the hook, grabs it, leaves, closes the door. She goes to the party, has a great time, supposedly, comes back, and as she comes into the room, she flips on the lights and sees her roommate murdered on the floor. And written on the wall in her blood is,
Good thing you didn't turn on the lights.
because the murderer was in there already. And had she not gone to that party, she'd be dead too. So the lesson is, do not stay home to study. Go to the party, for Pete's sake.
Yeah, obviously that's a huge urban legend. I think everybody's heard that story
Thanks,
one
John.
point or another. I don't think it was really Crystal's cousin that happened to.
Yeah, I think she told us a lot of stories that happened to like her good friend. And I
Right.
think it's just because we were kids.
Wink. Yeah. It's a classic, though.
But we have a real story. And this is from a listener to the show named Zayden, a good friend of the show.
Is it Zayden?
Zayden.
Should we keep the sound going?
Yeah, here's another story, and it takes place in the woods as well.
Oh, perfect.
And so this is a real story, according to Zayden. My old friend Wes had a run-in with a banshee just before his uncle died. Now, in the last episode, we talked about banshees briefly, and I would like to do an episode on banshees at one point because there's some interesting lore. But this is how the story goes. Is that a banshee?
I like that. Just go with it, Jer.
Very smooth.
That was an accident.
Okay. My old friend Wes had a run-in with a banshee just before his uncle died. This was about 8 or 9 years ago. One night in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, Wes, his dad, and his uncle suddenly heard a scream coming from the woods. His dad and uncle went out to find out what the scream was, But after an hour of searching, they didn't find anything and eventually returned to bed down for the night. They woke up the next morning and found the uncle had died. Zayden said, "Chilled me to the bones when I heard the story." And it's a short story, but what's interesting about that is in the last episode, we talked briefly about banshees and how they foretell the death of someone close.
Right.
And that's the legend and the lore behind banshees. Now, I did send you, John, a few clips of potential banshees.
Ooh.
Real banshees recorded. Now, to be fair, these recordings were not titled as banshees, but they were titled as unknown sounds coming from the woods. The first one is going to be the Whitset sounds. So this comes from Whitset, which is a Wet'suwet'en village in central British Columbia, Canada. I guess Wet'suwet'ens were the First Nations people in the area. So the video, we'll link it in the show notes, it's a snowy scene, kind of getting close to nighttime, and these are the sounds coming from the wilderness.
Weird.
That is pretty creepy.
I would be creeped out to hear that.
At first, I was gonna say like it almost sounds like a primate yell, but then I'm like, but there's like a mourning sound.
Yeah,
like a
the
sad
third one sounded almost other dimensional. I mean, not other dimensional, just had like
An eerie quality
Right.
to it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And of course, there's a lot of creepy sounds in the woods. and
Right.
If you've ever heard raccoons fight or cats fight,
Oh
for
man,
that matter.
those are demons. Let me tell you about it.
Okay, so the next sound. Is this is from Scotland. So what's interesting about
In
this?
the heart of Banshee land.
Yeah.
in the heart of Banshee land.
That's Ireland, actually, right? I guess they could go to Scotland too. Welsh. It's the whole area.
I can't do a Scottish accent, so I went to the Irish. In the heart
This
of
is so
Banshee land.
cheesy.
That's so bad.
Okay, so this comes from Scotland. This was captured by a hotel night manager by the name of Paul Naylor. He was doing his usual shift at the Crown Inn in Stornoway on the Isle of Lewis in Scotland, when at around 2 a.m. he recorded what he thought was a wolf baying in the distance. But here's the catch. There are no wolves in Scotland.
Wolf baying? Is that what you said?
Baying. Yeah,
All
that's
right.
like a calling.
I know what it is.
So if there are no wolves in Scotland, what is this sound?
Okay.
Werewolf, duh.
You can just play it. That was how he's setting it up to play it.
Okay, sorry.
It almost sounds
Human?
human in a
Yeah.
weird way.
Like melodically human,
Like a woman.
very heavy set woman.
Kind of sounds like John.
It does sound sad though. I will give you that.
I mean, I literally did this the other night behind in the house.
Just yelling out.
It was probably a sound designer working on a movie.
That's probably what it was. Well, it was. So in the video, which this video we'll also link in our show notes, it's filming the scene of like an outside the street of a town in British Columbia. So it's not in the wilderness. I mean, there's probably wilderness around.
Some drunk person.
Yeah, who knows? Some people suggested online that it could be like a lost orca calling for its kin in the waters off the beach. But
That kind of makes sense.
it could be. I just found some sounds that I thought were creepy because there are a lot of unexplained sounds, and I was trying to find one that. You okay there, buddy? Go. Sorry. I was trying to find one that kind of more like werewolfy, sounds like maybe a dog man or something, and it's a really creepy video of a guy standing with like his phone aimed at the woods, and
I've seen that. That's excellent video.
and I could not find it again. So we'll have to do. I'd like to do an episode sometime
Yeah.
on creepy sounds from the woods because there's a lot of them out there.
What's keening?
Okay, so this is the next thing that I want to mention. So banshees.
Yeah, I mentioned this on the last episode, how we get the idea of the banshee from, they used to hire people to mourn at funerals. They would pay people to do it, and then they become socially outcast because
Yeah.
no one wanted to be around them because they reminded them of death all the time.
Yeah.
Let me read this bit real quick. This kind
okay.
of breaks down the Banshee situation. So historians have traced the first stories of the Banshee to the 8th century, which were based on a tradition where women sang in a sorrowful song to lament someone's death. These women were known as keeners, and since they accepted alcohol as payment, they were said to be sinners and punished by being doomed to become banshees. According to the mythology of the banshee, if she is spotted, she will vanish into a cloud of mist, and this action creates a noise similar to that of a bird flapping its wings. Legend says that banshees don't cause death. They only serve as a warning of it, which matches Zayden's story. Because his friend's uncle died the next day. Here's the twist, too, because banshees are obviously pretty freaky. They're shown pretty malevolent in our culture, but not all banshees are hate-filled creatures. There are some that had strong ties to their families in life and continue to watch over them in death. When they manifest themselves, these banshees appear as beautiful, enchanting women that sing a sorrowful, haunting song, which is filled with concern and love for their families. This song can be heard a few days before the death of a family member, and in most cases, the song can only be heard by the person for whom it is intended. So these are some of the different ideas behind where the banshee comes from. But it's interesting because, as you mentioned in the last episode, that the idea of the banshee, the name was similar to those that were keening, right?
Yeah.
And that the myth of the banshee, you kind of suggested, came from these people singing. And according to this lore, that's kind of true, but they also were believed to have turned into these kind of paranormal elementals.
Interesting.
That live this life and continues to supposedly haunt people to this day, or to warn of a foreboding event or a tragic event. But I do have a clip. So the next clip, this is of keening women. This is kind of a strange clip, but it's freaky enough because it's a group of people. They're actually part of like a anti-nuclear protest. They were called I think they were the Women of Green, what was it? The Greenham Women. So these were a group of people that were protesting in the 80s to keep nuclear cruise missiles out of Britain. And so they protested in droves. And the video will link on the show notes where this clip comes from too. It's weird because they almost look like, those zombie walks people do now?
Oh, yeah.
They're dressed all in black, which is what I guess keeners would do. But they also look like they're painted up in zombie face almost, and they're dressed in like punk gear with like studs and stuff. But yeah, this is just an example of what like a lot of keeners would sound like, and it was just a kind of a freaky sound.
It is a very
when they were all
freaky sound.
keening together. So yeah, this is a clip from
Here
that.
we go. That is terrifying.
Sounds like hell.
Yeah, it does.
I should set that as my alarm clock. Up for another day.
You'd be like,
What is happening?
that's freaky.
So that's what keening is.
Yeah, it's enough.
It's just like yelling.
Yeah.
I would not want to go to a funeral if that's what was going on.
And I guess it was
That's what's, oh my gosh, that is
it's
bizarre.
like you're basically you're mourning is what it is. It's
I hear
sorrowful.
that, yeah.
And it's a tradition in Ireland.
It probably does release some energy.
Yeah.
You know.
I really wanted to include a clip that was from the Carol Burnett show where Robin Williams is there. He goes to a funeral with Carol Burnett and he's like, do you want to, if you want to release some of your sadness, I'll show you how to keen. We can do it's a beautiful sound.
It's a beautiful sound.
And then he goes on to do it, and then gets her to do it.
Oh, Robbie.
I wish I could just play the clip, but you copyright stuff.
Oh, we could have done that.
I got it right here.
Yeah, I think we'll be fine.
Are you sure you don't want to keen?
I don't know, and perhaps some other time. I just
Please,
don't know.
please. There's no time right now to try.
But I just don't know if I could.
Oh, yes, you can. Now, come on. It's a wonderful, wonderful sound.
I've never heard it.
It's kind of like, a little bit like this. It's like,
So yeah, that's about the sound.
That is a really bizarre thing that I learned today.
Keening.
It's
strange.
a tradition.
Apparently, it helps. It's
I can
cathartic.
see how
it's
that
very
could
cathartic.
be. Yeah, it's like crying, but
Yeah,
with
scream
more
crying.
energy. Yeah.
I was trying to find if there were encounters of banshees in the Upper Peninsula, like other ones, because that's where supposedly Zayden's friend Wes had experienced this. I did find a road named Banshee.
Oh.
In Gwynn, Michigan. Maybe there's some reason why it's
Gwyn, that sounds Irish, doesn't it?
maybe there's a reason why it's named that. Maybe I couldn't find any real encounters of it, but I did find something that took place in the Upper Peninsula. Now this comes from a Reddit post. The photo is definitely real. I mean, from what I can tell, it's not photoshopped. It's a photograph of another photograph. It's laying like on a desk, and I've cropped it for the show notes. As the story goes, it was this guy he was kind of a conspiracy theorist, and his boss knew this, so his boss would like tease him. And then one day, his boss brought him in the office just to chat, and he said, "I have a picture actually of what I think is a UFO encounter." And he's like, "Well, of course I want to see it." And so he thinks the guy's like joking with him. And then eventually, after telling him his story that happened in the Upper Peninsula, I guess near Glen Harbor, at 2:30 in the morning, he says he was driving, and suddenly his entire car lit up. As he described it, this insane light and shrieking noise that hurt his ears, like a banshee. And in the photograph, you see this mist, you see these pillars of light coming down, or maybe shooting up in this ghostly kind of apparition. But I just thought it was interesting because it was this, like he described as a shrieking banshee sound. It could have been anything.
Right.
But the picture is definitely compelling, and it'll be in our show notes too.
Oh, crazy.
That's this is on the road.
Yeah, he's pulled over, looks like on the side of the road, and there's these
That's definitely odd.
pillars of lights either shooting up or shining down with this like cloud of mist underneath, and he's hearing this like banshee.
That's
as he describes it,
weird. I
shrieking
mean, could
sound.
that be like some sort of a seance in the woods or something?
Yeah, who knows? I mean, and the thing that supposedly Zayden's friend Wes heard in the woods that night, you know, who knows if it was a banshee or if it could have been anything. Maybe
I
there's some
certainly
other...
wouldn't go back there and check it out.
No.
For anybody listening out there following along, if you want to look in our show notes, we'll have the image there, but don't do it while you're driving. Pull over.
It'll scare you off
Oh,
the
that
road.
is crazy looking. I mean, if that's fake, they did a really cool job with the special effects. It looks like legit film.
Well, the original story was from like 1996.
Okay, yeah, it looks
early Photoshop, and looking at the picture,
looks like something out of Fantasia.
yeah, it just looks very surreal.
It almost looks like it could be a natural phenomenon.
Yeah, there is something
Swamp gas.
might involve the
Swamp gas.
it might involve the
It's like
aurora
a
borealis.
bad name for when you're sick.
Swamp gas. He's got swamp gas. Stay away
Honey.
stay away from Fred. He's got swamp gas tonight. It sounds like swamp ass, which is a thing.
Oh boy, what?
Swamp ass. You
What
heard
is
of
that?
It's like when you're real humid, right?
You're sweaty
Yeah.
and
Where are you guys from? I've known you for 35 years and I've never heard
Well,
that
I've
before.
never said it, but I've heard it used before.
Yeah, we don't say those things. We just
We're high society.
But yeah, check that out. I mean, it's not necessarily like I just thought it was kind of an
kinda
interesting
cool.
correlation.
Yeah.
Check it out, believehole.com, bitches.
It'll be up there, that image. It is pretty compelling. But that's all we have in Banshees right now. I didn't want to do like a Banshee episode.
Well, you know, before we take a break, I wanted to talk about, because you were talking about Banshees. What?
I was going to say, I'm excited for my cookie.
I thought you were going to say, yeah, I'm excited for the break. Yeah,
Yeah.
and you brought a cookie here.
I did.
How old are you?
It's a protein cookie.
Oh, okay.
Well, not a
Call what you
child.
want.
Is it made of crickets?
Well, I didn't have many choices at the gas station.
That's true. Gas station doesn't have the quality aisles.
No. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. So you just wanted to mention that you brought a cookie before I continue?
No, well, I wasn't going to say anything, and Chris looked at me. He's like, "What?" And so I had to tell him what I was thinking.
You can see it in his
wanted
eyes.
your
He's
cookie?
excited for this break coming up. So now we know why. It's
All
the
right,
cookie.
all right.
So when you said you were going into Banshee stuff, first I said how boring to myself, and then I said,
Hey,
I'm just kidding.
I'm going to do a full Banshee episode eventually.
I'm pretty sure there's a Japanese demon that's Banshee-like. So
I kept thinking that too.
So I tried to find that. I didn't find that, but they do have like 1,000.
Tried to find that. I didn't find it.
They do have like 1,000 different demons with different names, and they're all unique and full of detail.
Yeah, they're really-
So it was really hard to. But I did find a couple. I just wanted to read real fast because they're fun.
They have a cool culture.
None of these are going to be pronounced correctly. So any of our Japanese listeners, I think we have 4 now.
Can you do it in an offensive Japanese accent?
No, I won't do that. The first one here is the. This one's just kind of cool. It sounds kind of mysterious and fun to me. This is the bakakahira, which literally translates to ghost whale.
Ooh. I like that.
It's a mythical, well, maybe mythical, Japanese yokai, which means ghost, phantom, or strange apparition from Western Japan. It is supposedly a large ghostly skeleton whale, and it is said to be accompanied by strange birds and fish.
Do you have a clip?
Yeah. No, I don't have a clip of that. That'd be cool.
Pretty
We have a clip of the
special
yokai.
clip.
This one's my favorite. Maybe I'll save this one. Okay, the next one is
Sorry, what was the name of that one again? The whale one?
the bakakuraha,
Okay.
something like that.
Becca
I think the
Karaha.
pronunciation was slightly off, but okay.
Probably. There is the
Nailed it.
Yukiona, the snow woman. There are many variations of this popular Japanese tale. Yukiona is usually described as having white skin, a white kimono, and long black hair. She appears in snowfall and glides without feet over the snow like a ghost. She feeds on human essence, and her killing method of choice is to blow on her victims to freeze them to death and then suck out their souls through their mouths. So like Sub-Zero.
Spooky.
Yeah. But that's what I like about their demonology. It's so rich and it's so like it's
Like
almost
Sub-Zero.
It's all it's almost poetic. The way
Yeah.
that
Yeah,
their
it
their
almost
demons
sounds
are written.
romantic.
Yeah, and a lot of them are kind of romantic in the way that there's like original definition of romance, like mysterious not
Right.
knowingness.
Yeah.
And they're often cursed women is like how the demons begin in their lore. There's someone who is slighted. This is my favorite though.
Hell hath no
this
fury.
This is the favorite that I
Yeah,
came across today.
true.
This is the Akappa. Akappa is an amphibious yokai demon or imp found in traditional Japanese folklore. They are typically depicted as green, human-like beings with webbed hands and feet and a turtle-like carapace on their backs.
Sure.
Carapace.
A depression on its head called its dish, or sara. It retains water, and if this is damaged or its liquid is spilled, the kappa is severely weakened. The kappa are known to favor cucumbers and love to engage in sumo wrestling. They are often accused of assaulting humans in water and removing a mythical organ called the shrikadoma from their victim's anus.
What is
Let
that?
me say that again. From their victim's anus.
So where is that?
That's really bizarre. I think the most bizarre part about all that is they like cucumbers.
Yeah, well, the detail. I love the detail.
That's what I love about the Japanese demonology. There's and one of the other cool things about, and we talked about this a long time ago, but their idea of their demons are all tied to geographical locations. So depending on where you are in Japan, these sorts of entities exist there. In other parts of Japan, these other entities exist there. And I think it's in Buddhism, but after you die, there's an astral plane that exists. I could be getting this very wrong, but there is a tradition where you are tied to a location and you can travel around the planet that we know. But it's all tied to geographical locations. It reminds me of like ley lines, spiritual things like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just wanted to read some of those because I love the Japanese folklore.
Yeah, what's the director? The famous director that's done like Spirited Away and
Miyazaki? Yeah.
Miyazaki, is that what it is?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting because a lot of their popular culture is based on demons. A lot of like Spirited Away, a lot of almost like children's stories, like those movies that he does in the books, they're all based on these kind of like colorful representations of these demonic entities.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, because it's a different sort of, it's not like the Christian ideas of demons where everything's satanic.
They're more neutral, right?
It's more of like, it reminds me of like a Nordic tradition.
Right.
Where it's
or
like
Zoroastrianism, where there's good and bad.
where there are entities that exist, but they're not all fighting for a singular demonic devil.
And they're not all malevolent.
They're more like interdimensional beings, but they do, many of them are bad, feed on people's essences or kill people, or they're tricksters, like the fox spirits.
A world of different entities that exist, both in good and bad ways.
Right.
With good and bad intent. Yeah, that's kind of fascinating. I feel like we're doing like bits of like different episodes all in one.
You guys want to take a break and kill that cricket?
Let's find that cricket.
Or take him outside?
We'll release him.
Yeah, we're not going to kill him.
Catch and release.
All right, we'll be back. Stay tuned, listeners.
Stay out of the woods. For Pete's sake.
For Pete's sake.
Stay out of the woods.
Welcome back, guys.
And we're back.
We are about to venture into the story of Annabelle.
Oh, the real story.
The
of
real
Annabelle.
story.
Well, as real as I have found online.
I mean, compared to the fictionalized version.
Yes, compared to the fictionalized version.
Which had a lot of tones of reality. Just wasn't the full, thick, real version. You're going to get a belief hole, frankly.
Everything you saw in the recent movie was all fiction.
It wasn't all fiction, man.
Everything that occurred in that film.
Yes, of course.
Except for the first scene
the
where
plot, the story wasn't based in reality, but there were nodes of reality that you will.
Nodes of reality.
Anyone that is going to hear your breakdown of the Annabelle story is going to be like, "Oh, that's why they threw this into the show. That's why they put this in the movie." When you were telling me, there were elements that were like, "Oh, that's why they did that." I bet. So go ahead,
Why don't you share some with us?
and I'll
All right,
I'll pick
I'll
them out
tell you
later.
the story. So it all starts. Do we want to crickify?
It's up to you. You're the one spieling.
Let's do it.
Let's
Can we
crickify.
start with a thunderstrike and then go into crickets?
For you, sure, Chris.
Thanks, buddy.
You want the powerful lightning or the?
Oh yeah, I want the like animated Banicula
He doesn't
thunder.
have that one.
No, I don't have that one, but I have a powerful one or a more gentle one.
Surprise me. It was 1970 when a caring mother buys this Raggedy Ann doll, an antique one, by the way, from a secondhand store for her daughter who loves dolls, oddly at 28, but I guess it was the 70s.
But she buys an antique Annabelle doll, Raggedy Ann doll.
Antique.
So I thought that Raggedy Ann started in like the 80s. It was an older.
As early as 1915, maybe before.
1915 they had Raggedy Ann. Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So she buys this for her daughter, who's about to graduate. She's in her senior year at university for nursing, and she lives in a tiny apartment with her roommate, Angie. So her mom gives her this doll, and she's elated. She's got this new old Raggedy Ann doll. They bring it home, and very quickly they start noticing creepy things happening with this doll. It moves around. Subtle, small things at first, like it'll be in different positions. She'll leave it on the couch, and she'll come home from class and see that its legs are crossed all of a sudden. Gradually, things get more dramatic, where the doll begins moving from room to room. Sometimes this occurs when they're at home, which terrifies them because they're thinking that maybe someone's breaking into the house. So what they do is they take Scotch tape and they start putting it around the entranceways of their apartment. They tape up their windows, they tape up the doors, just to make sure that no one's coming in and playing some cruel trick. The night goes on, they check the room. Annabelle's again been moved.
And the tape hasn't been disturbed on the doors.
Tape is fine. Tape is fine. No one's opened the door. No one's opened the window. So they're growing concerned, but she loves this doll. So one morning they take her to breakfast, the doll, right? They're treating it as if it's a real child. And
why are they doing that?
They just love this doll. I don't know.
Okay, so this is before they find anything out.
I mean, they notice that it's moving around. They notice that little things are happening. But it's enough to where you can kind of rationalize, maybe I forgot, that kind of stuff. And as they're eating breakfast, the arms of the doll levitate and place themselves on the top of the table. This is the first time they physically see it move in front of them, which I think would terrify anyone.
Yeah?
But it didn't freak them out too much for some reason at that point.
What?
Yeah.
It probably was just a malfunction.
It was a heavy breeze.
Do you think they rationalized like, oh, her arms must have been up there and we didn't notice?
Maybe. I mean, I don't know. I honestly don't know why at that point you wouldn't already be like throwing this thing out. Apparently, she had a fiance at the time, Lou, who from the very beginning was like, there's something fucked up with this doll. You need to get rid of this doll. But she was like, this is my mom gave this to me. I feel a sense of responsibility for this doll for some reason. I feel close to this doll. But then something even stranger begins to happen. About a month in, they start finding notes written on parchment paper, which is a type of paper that doesn't exist in the apartment complex. The creepiest thing about it, it's not that the notes say creepy things like help us or help Lou, which is her fiance's name, just cryptic, solemn sort of notes. It's that the handwriting is a childlike handwriting. So at this point, they think, okay, we need to figure out what's going on here. Obviously, this isn't our imagination. So they contact a medium. A friend of a friend knows a medium. They're like, you need to get in touch with this person. So she comes to their apartment, and they begin to do a seance. And during the seance, the medium tells them there's a spirit that's attached to this doll. The spirit's name is Annabelle. She was an innocent, sweet girl who died in a car accident outside of where this apartment has been built since her death. And she is here and attached to this doll because she's lonely and she's looking for love. So the girls immediately are like, oh, we want to take care of her. This is a sweet young girl. It's so tragic she's lost in some realm, but she's found her way into my doll. So they start treating her as if this doll is a real girl. They start buying bracelets for it. They start dressing it up. They start taking it on trips. They would take it in the car.
Don't feed the bears.
Yeah, starve your ghouls, people.
Starve your ghouls.
Starve your ghouls. So
don't feed
but
them.
they don't know any better. This is, 70s, it's before all
they think it's a little girl.
Yeah, and this is what the medium told them.
Did the medium know ahead of time that there was something with the doll? They were concerned?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know how intense they were with their skepticism. If they were like, all right, don't tell her anything. I think they probably just wanted confirmation. I don't think they were thinking that way back then.
Because if the medium had any idea that there was...
Right, she could have totally made it all up, which would tie into what happens later.
If there was an entity attached,
Right.
it would feed into that story that would be good for the entity so that they would continue...
Oh, let me get there, Jeremy.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Jumping the gun
More
here.
is to come. So this doll becomes sort of part of the household of these two college students and the visiting fiance. And the visiting fiance is not enjoying this situation. And one night he's sleeping on the couch, and Annabelle is at the foot of the couch. And he has this incredible, terrible nightmare where Annabelle begins floating up his leg and up onto his chest. And then starts strangling him with her little doll hands.
That doesn't sound scary.
It doesn't sound scary, but for him it was terrifying.
Must have just been on the trachea or something, small part of the neck.
And it was one of those situations where was it a nightmare? He woke up saying it was a nightmare, but he said it was if he was awake and he couldn't move.
Was it a tight skin nightmare?
A tight skin nightmare. At this point, he wakes up and he grabs the doll and he says, Annabelle.
Is that his voice?
He's like, Annabelle, you're just a raggedy doll. You can't hurt anybody. And he throws it. And right after he throws it, whatever's attached to this doll attacks him. He doubles over in pain, and they start to notice that there's blood coming through his shirt.
Oh.
And as he opens up his shirt, they see 7 deep scratches. There's 3 vertical scratches. We've talked about there's
always
3
3,
scratches.
yeah.
And then 4 horizontal scratches, making a total of 7 scratches.
So the demon attacks, any kind of demonic attacks, usually are in 3s, right? 3 scratches.
6.
But it's interesting, this demon must have used one hand down, and then to make the horizontal scratch, used one hand and then an extra finger.
Yeah, he borrowed a friend.
Okay.
You may like that, yeah.
There you go. No, but that's creepy.
Terrifying. And they said it also looked like burns as well as rips.
Any photographic evidence of this?
Not that I've seen.
Huh.
So
It was the 70s. They didn't have smartphones.
You
But
would
actually-
probably take a picture of that, though.
If you had a camera
yeah.
with film, you
Yeah.
got to get the film,
Yep.
got to get it. And it didn't last very long, right? Didn't you say like it dissipated?
Well, it was like in 3 days it had healed.
Oh,
In
3 days
two,
at a
2 or
camera?
3 days. No, I don't know. Listen, this is
Okay,
just
sorry.
reporting the story. Yes, I would say, hey, where's your camera, bro? 1970s, they have them somewhere.
But then again, what are they going to do with the picture? Post it online?
I would
you
document
take a picture.
it.
You got attacked by an invisible entity. You don't think you're going to
But part of
borrow a camera
Maybe,
from a
maybe
friend?
you'd want to forget about it.
Yeah, maybe you might want to forget.
That's true. Maybe you were to call
Just
more
not,
attention
yeah,
to you.
just forget that happened and move on. I mean, I could see that.
And we also know like how easy it is to rationalize stuff.
Why had those marks consistently at Uncle John's when we were staying there, fixing his place up after he died? I would constantly wake up with those 3 red
Scratches,
deep
I remember
lines.
that.
I mean, I wasn't bleeding. I think I had one time where there was a little, actually some blood.
Yeah. In the shower. I would get those in the shower.
I mean, what are you going to do? You shake
Yeah.
it off,
I did have a hard loofah, though. Might have scratched.
You're a weirdo.
Womp womp.
Yeah, that's bad. Thank you. Loofah.
Sorry.
Who uses loofahs? Girls, I guess.
Smart people.
I like loofahs.
Thank you, John.
You don't treat my body that well. So at this point, they're like, okay, there's something more going on here. It's obviously not what the medium said. There's obviously something darker. So they call a priest, Father Hegan, who then was like, I can't handle this. It's like, you definitely have something dark here, but I can't, this is out of my league. So he contacted the church, and the church contacts Father Cook, who works with Ed and Laurain Warren. That's how they get involved into the story.
All right.
So they show up in Connecticut at this apartment complex. They interview the girls, and they're like, okay, after getting that information, talking to them, hearing their story, they're like, we need to get this doll out of here. This is obviously, there's some demonic entity attached to this. This is not a little girl that's doing this.
And didn't you say when Lorraine came into the apartment, she felt this wave of negative energy?
She sensed that there was something going on here. It
It
wasn't
was
a
a
sweet...
deceiver.
It was a deceiver.
It
Deceiving.
was not a little girl named Annabelle.
Right.
That's what demons do. They deceive. It's their main role.
So they take the doll, right? And on the way home, they start feeling this intense wave of hatred directed at them.
Ed and Lorraine?
Ed and Lorraine feel this intense wave. Yeah, they're taking the doll out of there because at this point they've been developing their haunted vault of things.
Occult Museum.
Yeah, they feel as being knowledgeable about this stuff and how to handle these sorts of things. You can't just burn it and throw it away, as we know we've talked about with Ouija boards. You have to take care of it. You have to treat it with respect.
It's toxic waste.
Yeah, and it's like spiritual toxic waste.
You have to, in a magical sense, you have to bind it in a way. In
Yeah.
a spiritual sense.
You have to keep it caged.
You can't release that back into the ether.
Right.
Which is weird to think that something like that is permanently trapped somewhere.
Maybe that's why
Yeah.
Polly Pockets come in a pocket. It's like
Bad joke.
Because Polly is evil. You got to have the pocket.
Anyway, so they're leaving. They're heading back to their house, and as they're driving, they begin, both of them, even Ed, and he's not a sensitive, spiritually intuitive person. He's a nuts and bolts demonologist dude.
Nuts and bolts
Salt
demonologist,
to the
dude.
earth, demon hunter.
So they both start feeling this intense hatred, and as they're driving home, everything in the car is going wrong. Their power steering and power brakes are failing, so they can stop, but it's really difficult to brake. It's really difficult to steer, and when they go around curves, there's a tugging on the wheel in the direction of the curb.
Oh, that's creepy.
Yeah, isn't that pretty terrifying?
Yeah, I might stop.
So they get back to their place, and when they get back there, they don't realize the level of damage that this doll can do. They suspect that this is maybe one of the most evil objects that they've encountered, but they don't have anything ready for it. So they just set it next to Ed's desk in a chair. And the first few days it's there, it levitates off the chair a few times. Eventually it becomes sort of inert. It stops doing things. But it isn't until they start leaving town, going on vacation, they come back, then they start finding it's been moving around the house in different rooms, like it was doing in Donna's apartment. So, okay, we need to do something about this thing. It still has its energy. Whatever was attached to it is still attached to it, even though they've blessed it. They blessed her apartment. There's something still connected. We can't have this just sitting around our home.
They need to contain it.
Yeah. So they have another priest come over and take a look at it, and this priest picks it up. And actually, you know what? At this point, I'm going to go to that clip because this is going to tell you what happens to this priest who underestimates Annabelle's abilities, underestimates the entity that's attached to it. And he's going to tell what happens to this priest and then what also happens to two other people that take for granted the dark energy that surrounds this object.
I took the doll back to my home here where it's in the museum now.
Ed.
One time I had it just sitting in a chair. But a priest came here one day and he said, Ed, this doll is supposed to be infested by devils. He picks the doll up and he throws it across the room, just like the young man in the house. God is more powerful than the devil. I said, yes, Father, you're right. God is more powerful than the devil, but no priest is, no man. On his way home in a brand new car on Route 84, the car went out of control, almost head on into a tractor-trailer truck. It was demolished, and the priest was almost killed. The last thing he remembered seeing was that doll. A detective, a homicide detective that Laurain and I were working with, wanted to see the museum. And he came down here, he looked all over, and he said, you know, Ed, of all the things here, I can't take my eyes off that doll. At that time, it was still in a chair. The phone rang. I said, I'll be right back. Don't touch anything in this room. Everything in here is unholy, unblessed. Well, I wasn't even up there talking for 10 minutes. I heard him coming up the stairs. This man was a huge guy. He was about 6'3", 250 pounds, used to seeing grisly sights. He was sweating. He couldn't speak. He was trembling. I thought he was having a heart attack. I told him to sit down and I'd call an ambulance. He said, no, Ed, it isn't that. I said, well, what's wrong? I don't want to talk about it. That's what he said. I don't want to talk about it. Sometimes a little macho and cops, right, you know. Sure. And Laurain walked in, and he looked at Laurain. He said, I'll tell her about it, but I don't want her to ever talk about it again. Well, she didn't have to. The doll had been in the chair over in one corner of this room. When I came in, the doll was over in another corner on the floor. Everything had been knocked over, like there was a terrible struggle here. There was a terrible struggle. This man had picked that doll up. Wow. His aura had mingled with the aura of that doll, and something so terrible occurred that he resigned from the police department 3 months later and moved to California. Is that right? A young man came in here one day with a bunch of college students, and after I told him about the doll and many other things, he came over here. I was standing over in the other corner. He started tapping on this glass and said, I don't believe any of this is a bunch of hooey. He said, if that doll can do anything, let it do something to me right now. Put a slash on me. I put him out of the building. He was on a motorcycle. 3 hours later, he was dead. Wow. The girl that he was with said that he was laughing about the doll when the motorcycle, just like the car, went out of control, hit a tree, and killed him instantly. Yeah. The girl was in the hospital for over a year. You do never challenge devils. Don't mess with the devil, that's for sure, huh?
Creepy. So the priest that initially threw the doll and said God is more powerful than the devil and didn't respect the power that this doll might have had or whatever was attached to it had, he told me before the show that he had gotten into a near fatal car accident on the way home leaving, right?
Right, that was the beginning of that clip. Yeah, he left the place.
And Laurain warned him and said, like, I'm worried about you.
Yeah. So after he said basically the same thing that the kid said when the doll was staying at the apartment, the first priest that was there had said, you're just a doll. You have no power. Any demon doesn't have any power of God or whatever. And he throws it to the ground just like that kid did.
Almost challenging it.
And before he left, Laurain was like, listen, before you go, be careful. I'm worried about you. These are the experiences we had with the doll in our car. I'm getting the sense that something is going to be going on with you when you're on your way home. And he's like, I'll be fine. Gets in his car. And then on the way home, as the clip said, he was in a near fatal accident where his brand new car was totaled. He said he had lost control in the middle of the busiest intersection that he crossed on his way home. And
so his brakes went out, right?
Yeah, he couldn't stop. And he said the last thing he saw in his rearview mirror was the image of the doll. right before, and that's the last thing he remembered, and then black.
Yeah, that's creepy. That's
Yeah.
straight out of the movie.
Yeah,
And that's one of
it
those-
wasn't in there, but it would have made a
Should
good
have been.
scene. Yeah.
Well, that's one of those nodes of reality that was in the movie. There were shots where things were happening, and you'd see in the reflection the Annabelle doll, and then she'd turn.
Oh,
and
right.
look,
Yeah,
and
they
she
did
was
allude
gone.
to it when they were taking the doll back. Because at the very beginning of the movie, they do show the origin of Ed and Lorraine taking the doll back to their place. But the only difference is they're pulled over to a graveyard,
Yeah.
and they see there's a bunch of spirits that try to interact with the doll. 'Cause it's supposed to be a beacon for spirit energy. But they look in the rearview mirror when she's hearing the voice of Annabelle, and she sees her in the rearview mirror. So it's kind of an extrapolation.
It's a nod to that, but also
Yeah.
even in the fictionalized parts that were happening in the movie, where it was the house where the kids were, there were scenes where Annabelle was in there, or something would happen, and then the kid would see it in a reflection, and then she'd turn to look, and it was gone.
Yeah.
And it wasn't there. It was a nod to that kind of, I think,
Right.
the truth of the story. So, but then the kid who goes in with his college kids and is tapping on the glass that's encases Annabelle in the protective glass.
Right.
There was a box that was made for Annabelle and blessed, right?
Yeah.
So that Annabelle's evil couldn't escape. And the kid was tapping on that glass and saying, like, what a joke. I
Yeah.
don't believe in this. And then,
It's like messing with a lion cage.
yeah. And then he's laughing about it on his motorcycle on the way home, and then gets into a fatal accident.
Right.
That's so sad.
Very sad.
It's sad because, when you don't respect things like this, I feel
Respect
like
the danger.
you got to go into, it's like anything. Anytime you go into a place where there's danger, you have to have a certain level of respect to protect yourself and prepare yourself for what might happen.
Well, it's interesting because there's another doll. I didn't cover this, but there's a doll. I can't remember the name of this. It's a famous haunted doll, and it's also in a case somewhere.
in the Florida Keys.
Is it somewhere like that?
Yeah, it's a boy.
It's coastal. Yeah, it's
It's really creepy.
Jeffrey
old doll.
or something like that. The boy.
Jeffrey.
Jeffrey.
I don't know if that's the name.
People go to visit him, and they say that you write notes to it and stuff, and people that will make fun of it, they say they always get bad luck right after, and I forget exactly the
They get
details, but they always
cursed.
have to write an apology and send it to him, and then their bad luck
It's like
stops.
Billy or something.
Yeah, it's an interesting story. I mean, who knows? But it has a similar haunted background.
Right.
It'd be fun to do a doll episode, maybe. Maybe. I don't know.
I ran across that in Guatemala. They had this doll.
Oh, I remember
that.
It's the god they pray to. They give it cigars,
Yeah,
and they give it
it's like the
tequila.
party god.
Yeah, I can't remember. What is that god's name?
Quetzalcoatl.
I saw the
Quetzalcoatl.
doll that was creepy.
Yeah, it is. It looks like a gnome type
Yeah, it
thing.
was-
That's creepy.
Yeah, but most of the stuff in the film, I do recommend this movie. It was actually really good. There were certain elements in there that weren't in the museum. The TV that you see in there, where it kind of foretells the future, it's
Spoiler alert.
but it doesn't really spoil anything. It's an element of the film. But this is interesting, and this is the one story that I'm going to read. This is kind of a cool story relating back to that. But it's about the Conjuring mirror that I mentioned, and in the list of things that are in the producers got the idea for the television from the Conjuring mirror, and the story behind this is pretty creepy. You've heard of Scrying. I think we talked about that before.
Yeah, that goes back to John Dee.
John Dee.
Right.
Scrying and creening.
Scrying and creening. We got a lot of eating words today.
It's keening.
Keening, scrying.
Keening.
So scrying is when you look into a dark reflective object and you try to get spirits to present themselves. You're basically looking.
Like Bloody Mary.
Yeah, that's a good example.
But that's,
yeah.
I mean, that's a dark twist on the origination of it was
What's it called?
Scrying.
Scrying. What a weird word.
John Dee had what was called supposedly a black mirror,
Yeah.
which was this special mirror that he could use to speak to angels, he called them.
Right.
And he tried to develop a system or gain the wisdom of what's called Enochian magic.
Yeah. That'd be a great episode
By
to
talking
do.
to angels, yeah, that'd be a great episode to do. But he was like the first librarian. He was it Queen Victoria?
Yeah, he did a lot of
Elizabeth?
really amazing things for humanity, really, if you think about it. Like he started the first library. There's a whole history behind him that's really interesting.
But he's a genius, and he developed this mirror to talk to.
Yeah, he was into alchemy.
Mirror on the wall.
He was into mathematics when it was dangerous to be looking into mathematics because it was against,
It's a form of magic.
yeah, doing arithmetic. I wish that was still a rule in school.
No
Sorry,
math.
What are you doing? Is that math over there?
Stop doing math at home.
So this is, I'm just going to read this quick because I think this is interesting. This is about the Conjuring mirror that's in Ed and Lorraine's haunted museum. And Annabelle comes home. There is a television set in the museum that shows the future when you look into it. The TV set was completely fabricated for the film, but the idea may have come from the Conjuring mirror in the Occult Museum. The mirror was given its name because someone supposedly attempted to conjure spirits on its reflection. With this particular object, a man in New Jersey is said to have sat in front of the wall-mounted mirror for hours on end, continuously asking to summon his deceased family members. Quote, "Hey, I want to see you. Can you come and talk to me?" he would ask the mirror as he sat in darkness with nothing but a red light bulb behind him. The man beckoned the looking glass for about 2 weeks. After a fortnight passed, quote, ugly monstrosities' faces appeared on the mirror. The hellish faces were so diabolical that they drove the man to a mental institution.
Ugh.
This type of conjuring is known as crystalmancy. Crystalmancy is when a spirit is able to present itself on a shiny object such as a TV, a mirror, a plate, glass window, a bumper of a car, even.
Crystalmancy?
Crystalmancy. So it's like crystal ball.
Scrying, and what
Yeah.
these weirdest terms
Yeah.
is Keening? Creening? Or
Keening.
Keening, scrying, and crystalmancy.
Well, these are all are very archaic sorts of terms, so you get them from, old forms of language.
I mean, I've never heard of any of these things until today.
Well, you're welcome.
We'll add them to our Beliefful
Dictionary?
glossary.
Encyclopedia?
Glossary.
But it makes sense. Crystalmancy, it makes sense because it's like
Crystal balls.
it's like utilizing a crystal ball to see the future.
Mm-hmm.
Some kind of reflective surface, right? That's the idea.
Yeah. So the Warrens gained possession of the Conjuring mirror when the owner's family called them to their home after he was admitted to the mental institution. That's a creepy history behind
Yeah.
that object. I'm sure they all have creepy histories behind it.
Mirrors are weird.
But that idea of staring deeply into a mirror to
We talked about that, man, on the Halloween episode where we talked about the different games you can play. Remember that?
Yeah. Mhm.
And one of them involved setting your alarm to wake up at like 3 a.m, go into a black room, light one candle, and look into a mirror. Right? Wasn't
Right.
the idea? Same kind of. It's almost the same story as far as the protocol.
Well, it's a super ancient concept of staring deeply into a reflective surface and hoping to see something from another realm.
Yeah.
That goes back to Bloody Mary. It goes back to Conjuring mirrors.
Candyman. Anyone?
Candyman.
Interesting.
Yeah. Scary film.
I'm pretty sure Candyman was all made up, but
I don't know.
That was a good movie.
that's a great movie. Although it does not stand up well. I did rewatch it about 2 years ago, and I was like, oh my god, really? It's not that good. I mean, the concept's still great. I'll have to admit, I might have been high. I'll have to check it out again.
Okay, so
The Hoodly Daddle.
too much hoodly daddle. So moving on.
Are we take a break?
Yeah, we can. I mean, that's pretty much the end of my Annabelle stuff. There's so much we can get into with Ed and Laurain Warren. It'd be fun to do more topics on.
Well, I have more coming up.
Oh, great. Okay.
And with Annabelle, I just want to mention, she's kind of the original black-eyed kid. You look at the Raggedy Ann doll,
Oh, yeah.
just black eyes.
I honestly think the real doll looks way creepier than the one they have in the movie, which is so over the top. This is a scary doll.
Yeah, it reminds me of a young Kirsten Dunst.
The one in the movie?
Yeah, with too
I'm
much
sure
makeup.
she'd be flattered.
Well, obviously she's more
A
attractive.
young, demonic, plastic Kirsten Dunst.
Or the doll would be flattered anyway.
The doll would be.
That's true.
She says thank you.
Before we go to break, John's got a new patron stinger. So any listeners out there who are interested in hearing a customized, interesting, strange, funny clip with your name involved, John, you explain it.
If you like the show and you want to support us, we're still baby steps.
We're babies.
But we are, the long-term goal is to continue growing the show and continue doing more. And if you want to support us, you can head over to beliefful.com and click the Patreon button.
Or even just search us on Patreon.
No, you can't.
You can now.
You
Oh,
can?
you can?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
They fixed it. I contacted them, and we are now
nice.
now searchable on Patreon.
Yeah. Like the show, subscribe on the podcast, just share it with your friends, all
Continue
that fun
leaving
stuff.
your super awesome comments, guys.
Yeah, and thanks everyone who's signed up. We really appreciate it. And more shows to come.
So you'll get something like this with your name in it. Go ahead, John.
Here we go. This is Lewis, by the way.
Lewis, you are one of a kind. One of a kind. You are a dear friend, and we thank you. Thank you, Lewis. For being on our team. You are on our team. You are a true servant to us now. Well, you're more of a friend than a servant. But always be grateful for your service. We will. To us. Oh, for sure. Oh, for sure. I'm really sorry. These guys are kind of intense. Shut up, Frank. Shut up, Frank. Join us. Forever and forever. Now and forever and forever and forever. You guys can suck my you-know-what. I'm sick of this. You guys are always trying to steal people's souls and it's getting old. Blah, blah, blah. I'm just tired of it. It's always the same thing. Well, why don't you do something about it then? You talk a lot. Supposed to do? It's constant. I just wanted to thank Lewis for being a patron, and you're trying to steal his soul.
Wow, that was intense. That was a good one. That was
Lewis,
really
you're
intense.
safe, Lewis.
That was dark,
You
but then
never know.
it got
This is like the reptilian underworld.
I don't know where that
battling
came
over his
from.
That was
soul.
good though. That was it was
kind of
very involved.
Yeah.
I liked it. Plot-wise, there was a whole
But I was like
thread.
doing it to myself and like having this conversation back and forth between these three like demons. It was just so ridiculous what I was doing last night.
Well, thank you, Lewis.
Lewis, your soul is safe. That was a fictionalized version of our thanks
You're
of
our
your
servant
support.
now. Our servant.
You're not our servant. You're a friend. Oh, well, that was dark and fun.
It ended well though.
It did.
Yeah.
It was a positive note.
It was
at the
a
end.
joke.
So, anyways, you guys want
It
you
was
guys
a joke, to be
your own-
clear.
your own custom singer that is always unique, always interesting.
They're gonna get weirder too because you only have so many ideas. Like
That's true.
I usually do them right when I get an idea. Like, do you remember when we used to record, like when we first started recording and we used to pitch our voices way down and just
Yeah.
do weird stuff?
Uh-huh.
That's where that kind of inspiration came from. So I like get an idea.
Okay, laddie.
I get an idea and then I go and do it and then whatever comes out, comes out.
All right, Matthew McConaughey.
I liked it, man.
Cool.
That was good. All right, well, let's take a break
and
and
then we'll finish up.
We got some more coming up, guys. We got a little bit more Warren stuff. Maybe some satanic dolls.
we'll see you in a minute.
Do you need more belief holes shoved down your ear balls? Not enough extreme banter in your day? Treat yourself. Belief Hole takes you full throttle into the gooey McNasties with monster content in off-the-cuff episodes. Become a member. Get on your nerd computer and surf the interweb to beliefhole.com. Access granted. Where you can sign up and get deep down the rabbit hole. Patreon. To get extra content, sign up as a patron at beliefhole.com or make a PayPal donation. You can also show your support by telling a friend, subscribing to the show, and by leaving a review on iTunes, whichever podcast you use.
Belief Hole is not affiliated with professional wrestling, monster truck rallies, or any arena events at this time. Belief Hole may cause confusion, loss of family and friends, greasy lip syndrome, existential crisis, nervousness, sticky gums, slow throat, severe aversion to morning news, tit nibbling, and tight skin nightmares.
Do you want more paranormal, conspiracy, mysteries, and things of that nature? Then head over to beliefhole.com and click the Patreon button. The ultimate in entertainment.
Hello.
We are back, everybody. Thank you for hanging in there with us. It's about to get fun. Not that
Because it wasn't fun
Not that
before.
it wasn't earlier, Chris. Your part was great.
Oh, thanks, Jeremy.
Sincerity.
When you were talking about the Annabelle thing, I was kind of curious because that took place pretty close to their home, right? Their home is in Connecticut. The Museum of the Occult that they have is in Connecticut. I forget the name of the town.
Yeah, the apartment that the Annabelle things took place in was also Connecticut.
Okay. So it made sense.
Oh, and by the way, real quick, Amityville. We mentioned earlier they were part of that.
Also Connecticut.
Yeah. Or New England somewhere.
Somewhere on the East Coast. I thought it was Connecticut. Anyways, but in that area, there's a lot of alleged history of devil worship, the satanic panic and all that. That was supposedly rooted in a lot of truth, especially if you look at the work of Ted Gunderson, the head of the FBI from Los Angeles. A lot of that stuff going on, and there's like a lot of pop culture references to it now and stuff, and a lot of it's kind of poo-pooed, but there is some real basis in truth and stuff that happened, and it makes me think if that area was kind of like a hub of witchcraft, that doll that is an antique version of Raggedy Ann.
Yeah, they did get it at a secondhand store. Who knows what
could it have been used in? It could have been used in some kind of like
Ritual magic.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So the story I'm about to tell is of another doll, and it was found in the woods nearby where they lived in Newtown, which may have a familiar ring. And we won't get into the whole Sandy Hook stuff. I know that's a hot button issue and a lot of tragedy involved in that. But that area has a history
Really?
of satanic worship.
Oh, well, that makes sense. Maybe a little bit.
So there are 2 mailing addresses listed online that I could find and that I've ever heard referenced from different sources for the Church of Satan. Satan in the Dana Carvey sense. So there are only 2 mailing addresses listed for the Church of Satan that I could find online and that I've ever heard referenced. One is a P.O. box in San Francisco, California, and the other one listed in their own literature online, quote, if you would like to receive an official information packet on our Church of Satan outpost in Connecticut, aka Church of Tiamat, or if you have questions, write to P.O. Box number, I won't say, Newtown, Connecticut. So the 2 mailing addresses listed for the Church of Satan online that I could find anywhere is San Francisco and Newtown. And in Newtown is where this next story takes place. While walking in the woods of Sandy Hook, Connecticut, a bow hunter came across a large, pale, white doll with horns. When he saw it, he immediately became frightened, and a feeling of dread swept over him. Apparently, he was sitting next to it. He began losing his ability to concentrate and felt that it was sucking his strength somehow. He couldn't concentrate, couldn't focus anymore. He just felt like he had to get away. So at this point, he's in the woods, right? He's in the middle of nowhere. And so as he starts trying to pull himself away, starts walking down this small footpath to find his way out, all of a sudden, right next to him appears a man, all dressed in black, white hair, white beard. And he's terrified of this man.
And he's deep in the forest, right?
Yeah, he's in the middle of nowhere, and this man just appears after finding this devilish-looking doll that's, giving him such dread. All he can think to say is, how do I get out of here? And the man doesn't look at him, doesn't say anything, just stretches out his arm and points to the way out. And this doll, which is a freaky looking doll, we'll have a picture on our website in the show notes.
It is creepy.
This doll ends up at the Warren Museum of the Occult. And Laurain Warren said that it was one of the most dreadful paranormal artifacts that she ever encountered. So after the Warrens put the idol, they believed it was an idol for satanic worship, they put it in their basement, they began experiencing things that might sound familiar and related to Annabelle, things like levitation.
With the doll levitating or them?
Well, it might have been Laurain because as it was written, they experienced things such as levitation and being in a catatonic state for days because of the satanic idol.
I mean, that thing, it's not, okay, the difference between, Annabelle, right? It's a Raggedy Ann doll, a typical
This thing was
doll.
crafted and made.
It looks, made for a ritualistic purpose.
Yeah, from the picture, it looks like a pale, maybe wooden carved doll with horns sticking out and these big black eyes and narrow face, small chin. It's just freaky looking. And to just imagine walking in the woods and coming across it all alone, who put this here?
Right.
Why is this here?
Or it sounds like what happened to this guy is he's sitting there, probably found a good spot, bow hunting for deer, and then all of a sudden realizes that the whole time he's been sitting next to this thing, just hanging there next to him on the tree.
Yeah, just imagine seeing that and being all of a sudden you realize you're in the middle of nowhere with this devil doll just staring at you with these black eyes, that the feeling of dread that would come over you. I can't imagine how scary that would be.
Yeah.
Paralyzing, I'm sure, especially when a man appears to help him out of the woods, but wearing this black cloak, white beard, white hair.
Not speaking
to him, not making eye contact, just pointing. You would think that is, I would wonder if it was even human, at that point. And then, so looking at the connections with that area of Newtown, the satanic connections, the mailing address of the Church of Satan, and, well, I'll get into that in a second, but there was a study done, I think it might have been in 1996, a random telephone survey conducted by the Connecticut Skeptical Society. So I'm imagining this was during the time of Satanic Panic.
Right.
They did a study on satanic beliefs in Newtown. So if you guys were to be asked in the small town that we live in Ohio, and someone asked, have you heard of satanic cult activity in your town?
I haven't heard of any, but...
No. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility, though.
There's that one house over there with the pentagram and there's a goat in the backyard.
Yes, I heard the goat bleating. I know.
I feel like it's more likely to happen in towns like these than in the middle of... Well, maybe not.
So this was the question
more
that was asked on
woods sacrifices, though.
Right.
Whatever.
But this is the question that's asked on the survey, right? And you would think our response in this small town in the middle of nowhere, Ohio, you would think...
Probably not.
Probably not. I haven't really heard of anything. There might be a story that's, not taken seriously. Well, in this random telephone survey on satanic beliefs in Newtown, Connecticut, 45% of local respondents said that they had heard of satanic cult activity.
45%?
Almost half had heard of satanic cult activity occurring in Newtown, where this doll was found.
Yeah.
Well, that's a lot.
You find this doll, looks like a demon, has horns, big black eyes, just sitting in the woods. And there are reports, local police have reported, school teachers, have made mention. Cult activity happening in the woods, child sacrifice, and then there's this doll found, that has this demonic hold on the person discovering it. It's one of the creepier, I think, things that they have in the museum. I remember seeing a YouTube video on it long ago that I'll link in the show notes, the video of some guy describing how the doll came to be, and I think it's a piece of a tour of the museum. And he's talking about this doll. That's where the screenshot's from, and that'll be linked in our show notes. But it's one of the more creepy dolls, and I think this stuff does go on. I mean, the Church of Satan in Newtown, the other name for it is the Church of Tiamat.
Yeah, why does it sound so familiar?
So it sounds familiar to me, and I was trying to figure that out because you were like, oh, it's like an ancient god, right? Which it is, but it was familiar to me because of Zecharia Sitchin. So this is a weird tangent alley to go down, but Tiamat was the planet that supposedly crashed into, I believe, Nibiru, and that broke apart and created the oceans on the Earth, which is why the oceans they don't match our water cycle in the sense that they are a unique, salty body of water.
Right.
And everything in the, our
that
water
comes
cycle
from the
is special.
Sumerian text. So is Tiamat Sumerian?
Yeah, so I'll just read this here. So in the religion of ancient Babylon, which, is used a lot in like with Molech and Baal and these
in alchemy,
old god worship type things, Tiamat is a primordial goddess of the salt sea, which connects to Sitchin's interpretation, mating with Abzu, the god of fresh water, to produce younger gods. Okay, now this is not from Wikipedia, it's from another source. This goes into Sitchin's beliefs on the situation. And those of you who are familiar with Sitchin, we haven't touched on ancient astronaut theory very much or his work with Nibiru, but this is a brief excerpt on how it connects to Tiamat, which is the name of this satanic church in Newtown. The Tiamat planet theory was written by Zecharia Sitchin. He attributes the creation of the ancient Sumerian culture to the Nephilim from Nibiru and claims that the asteroid belt was once a planet, which Sumerians called Tiamat. Tiamat, as outlined in the Enuma Elish, which is the Sumerian creation story, is a goddess and a monstrous embodiment of primordial chaos. Chaos magic?
Yeah.
Aleister Crowley, anybody? She gives birth to the first generation of gods. She later makes war upon them and is split in two by the storm god Marduk to form the heavens and the earth. So when they collided, that's what gave us our saltwater, hence the saltwater goddess. Through Sitchin's studies of Sumerian cosmology, he believes there is an undiscovered planet which follows a long elliptical orbit reaching the inner solar system roughly every 3,600 years. This planet is called Nibiru. Nibiru is the planet associated with Marduk in Babylon cosmology. Sitchin claims that one of Marduk's, or Nibiru's, moons struck Tiamat, breaking her into two separate pieces. The second half being struck again by one of Marduk's moons was pushed into a new orbit and created what we now know as Earth. This event is said to have happened 4.5 billion years ago. So it's interesting, this connection with Babylon and the old gods and the worship of the old gods and the naming of the Church of Satan in Newtown, where this doll was found and where there's this history of supposedly satanic occult activity or whatever. And it's so close to the Museum of the Occult and the Amityville Horror and the Annabelle doll. It just makes me wonder if the reason that these things bubble up, like the Annabelle doll and this doll found in the woods, if there is a regular kind of occultic work going on, or maybe in the past in that area that has led to all these different expressions of
Evil.
Demonic, or evil, demonic experiences. And that's it. That's all I have.
Interesting.
Everybody have a good night.
It's interesting. Although, I like the information about the Zecharia Sitchin stuff. I don't know how that ties back into the doll being found in the woods.
Well, but it is interesting. The church of Tiamat.
No, I get that.
Which is the satanic church in
Right.
Newtown, which is where the doll was found. That was kind of a tangent for
Right,
sure.
it was
But
definitely it was interesting.
Tiamat, I knew that had to do with something, and interesting that it ties into the ancient alien theory.
Right.
And a lot of the worship of the Babylon, the Red Woman in Aleister Crowley's work, the Woman of Babylon. Babylon is the religion of Babylon, if you will, is practiced by those that follow Crowley, I would say, and Babylon working.
Yeah. Babylon. Yeah, we talked about the Red Woman in the CERN episode.
Babylon.
That was sexy in a way.
All right, so
Hope you guys had a good time on this episode.
That's pretty much the episode, right? So it was semi-campfire stories, but I think more research than initially anticipated. But then we realized that the stories we wanted to cover, there was a lot of juicy background.
It's hard to, on this show, I feel like, because we're not interested. Okay, and this goes back in a little campfire story idea, the idea of creepypastas. Like when we were kids growing up, one of our favorite books was scary stories.
Scary stories to tell in the dark, scary stories for sleepovers.
Right. But those books, those were based on folklore.
Right. At least the scary stories ones.
And I would say they don't hold up, but the illustrations do. And now they're making a movie that's coming out about it.
Mm-hmm. I saw that.
There's a series, isn't it?
No, it's a movie.
Oh, I thought it was like a Netflix series.
No, it's a movie coming out. But it seems very like Goosebumpsy, like the Goosebumps movie where they're tying all the stories in together and creating one kind of plot line. Mm-hmm. But I think one of the reasons why those stories hold, I don't know, maybe, is the fact that those are all, like the author, I think he traveled the world, but he absorbed all these different folkloric legends from, Eastern Europe and wherever to gather these stories and write them in a children's book form. And I think when we do this show, we don't want to just tell creepypastas. We don't want to just pull something off Reddit like I did today, but at least that had a photo with it. Like we don't want to take something anonymous that anyone could have written and report it as a spooky story.
We could do that maybe for in this like extra stuff.
We could
Patreon.
But I think what's really
what makes it interesting is the fact that
the reality
based on actual events.
Yeah,
it's not quite the same if it's just a story.
I'd love to do a campfire episode where it's just stories, which is what we were kind of shooting for, but we got again too interested in the research, so it wasn't just stories. We want to do one where it's like all sound design. Maybe do that as a series, like every month or every other month we'll do an episode.
Can we call it Tight Skin Nightmares?
That's a great title.
Isn't that awesome?
Yes, coming from our Patreon stinger. Yeah, so
I don't think anyone else would take that name either.
No, Tight Skin
but
Nightmares.
I want it to be
sticky lip syndrome.
I want stories to be, I mean, they don't have to be, but when we talk about stories on the show, I want them to be real or have a potential for reality.
Well, and that's what I was trying to say, was that if we do get a really good creepy story, I at least want there to be a name attached to it, like a real person. Like
Zayden's story he sent in was a real person. Like,
yeah, I'm not as interested when I was trying to find some good campfire stories, and one of the reasons I went on the Annabelle thing, aside from the coincidence of going to see the movie and realizing this makes for good campfire fodder, was that when I was looking for information on maybe some really good campfire stories to tell that are true, I would find these true campfire stories from blogs, like Thought Catalog, things like that. But after the story was written, it always ended with like from, Big Boner 95 or something. Like some internet name, like no first and last name. I want at least like a name
or
to
someone
the
that
story.
You can kind of trust a little bit,
or attempt to contact where there's some validity behind the story. Otherwise, and it's all to me. Otherwise, you could chalk most of it up to creepypasta, especially if it's written really well. And it's like
a little too flowery.
I heard rustling in the grass. I heard soft, subtle cries of a small child, and
I was reminded of my youth.
Right. Yeah. It's a little too flowery. You're like, okay, this might not be legit. That's why I love when people call and write in. Most of the people that have had these really well-written stories or well-told stories, but then the other ones that come in that are not written well, but sometimes that's even more authentic because this is someone who's just trying to get their story
like
told.
A brief kind of, like even Zayden's was really brief.
Yeah.
But it, had a resonance of truth just because it's a person that we actually communicate with.
Yeah. And on that note, we'd love to do more episodes of these campfire things, and we would love to have people writing in or calling in, speak piping in their stories to have our own beliefful listeners have their stories told on the show.
Yeah.
So, do you guys have any crazy experiences, whether it's something supernatural, whether it's something so bizarre, or whether it's something so inexplicably synchronistic?
Or you just have a comment. You can go to our website, beliefful.com. Click on the leave a voicemail button or the speak pipe button, and you'll be able to record your voice. I think it's like 90 seconds. So you can record more than one if you need to, and we'll piece it together.
You can record your own and send it to us, too, if you have your own equipment.
Yeah, right. brothers@beliefful.com is the email.
But just contact us through the website,
Yeah.
And make it happen.
Cool.
And thank you. I want to say thank you again. We continue to get great reviews on iTunes and Facebook. The recent ones that have come in have been great. Everybody, we try to get back to everybody. I think we've been on top of that. So thank you for supporting the show. Thank you for sharing the show.
Yes, patrons, we especially thank you guys. You guys keep us going. You give us hope that we can continue doing this and maybe more and more as like a regular full-time thing eventually someday. Yeah. Burning the midnight oil right now, but eventually we'd like to just put our full hearts into this, and
it'd be cool to be able to do it like an episode or two a week is possible at some point.
Keep on dreaming.
Keep on dreaming with us. Don't have tight skin nightmares though.
Yeah. If you haven't heard your stingers yet, you will, and
we're like maybe 9 behind, but they're coming.
We are planning on producing more content for Patreon, creating another level where we will have hopefully double the content for those that sign up for it. And sign up now, because if you do,
you'll get grandfathered in when we release that.
Yes.
Unleash it amongst the populace.
So thank you guys.
Yes.
We love you, and we'll see you next time on
The Belief Hole. No.
Don't do that.
Good night. They can't see your silly face.
That just sounded weird.
All right, good night, everyone. Have a good night.
Sleep tight.